Welcome to the Honest Health Podcast with your host, Jeffrey Burke. Honest Health brings you the brightest minds in the natural products industry, as well as athletes and entertainers. Jeff will keep you entertained and informed while educating on how to be successful on your healthy journeys. Now, here's your host, Jeffrey Burke.
Hello and welcome to the Honest Health Podcast. My name is Jeffrey Burke. I'm so glad you're here. This is my new platform, the one that you can get the most up-to-date, groundbreaking information from some of the best minds within the natural products industry, as well as many voices outside the industry, every single one of them with a great message and a great story to share. Because in my mind, everybody can bring something new to the table, and you never know where you're going to learn that really next vital piece of information that just can be life-changing for you, or get answers to questions that you didn't even know you had. Today, I'm going to be speaking with Mollie Englehart, and if you have not had the absolute pleasure to follow her career thus far, if you will, you're going to really enjoy this. If you have been following Mollie, you're really going to like this as well. I got to give you a little synopsis of her wonderful things that she has done. I think that you're going to see a lot of these all over the media. Make sure to follow her on all of her platforms as well. Mollie is a local food movement crusader, a farmer, and well known as someone who has transitioned from being a Californian vegan chef to a cattle rancher and a regenerative chef. How cool is that? Also, an amazing artist, an author, a social media guru. You're going to love this. Sit back and enjoy. Hey, Mollie, how are you today?
I'm excellent. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad to have you. Your reputation precedes you, and I want to live your life. I think it's fantastic. I think you're getting to do all kinds of fun things. Is this something that you've had a passion for your whole life, or something you developed along the way?
I think I always liked food. My parents were they worked a lot. So we learned to cook for ourselves at a very young age, and me and my brother liked cooking. And so I was very good at cooking. I always was. And so when it was natural for me to get into the restaurant industry, and I had so many time, I was in the music industry before that, and then in the marijuana industry in California, and then opened ice cream shops, and ice cream shops led to vegan ice cream, led to vegan restaurants. But upon really digging in and wanting to bring the most highest quality food to the guests that I was serving, I started to look into nutrient density, and I started to look into getting local food, and started to look into regenerative agriculture. And my brother sent me this TED talk with Graham Sate, and my mind got broken open in probably 2013 when I really understood regenerative agriculture. And I would say that was the first crack in the armor of vegan LA Mollie I got, was regenerative agriculture. Like, cows are not the problem, they're the solution. I was like, whoa. And then that food waste was this huge problem, but there's no way to monetize food waste. So nobody's going to talk about it because you can't create an oligarchy class selling food waste solutions, but you can for solar and wind power and all that. So I just got totally woke up about that, and I decided to get my own farm. And first I tried to get other people to do it. Didn't work. I got my own farm, and then I started farming. And nature, even though I grew up on a farm, it was different because it wasn't mine. I wasn't observing nature. Made me realize there's no vegan food. Veganism, in all honesty, is a lie. You can either have the death on your plate and the nutrition associated with that, or you can have the death outsourced over there. It can be ground squirrels and foxes and microbiology and rabbits and all the other death that happens over that you don't see. And so that was a big realization for me. And then I was a mother. I still have 4 young children, and I was breastfeeding when we first got to the farm, and I'm breastfeeding my 2-year-old, and my older kid is wanting milk, and I'm giving him oat milk, and I'm thinking, why is my cow's milk bad? And all these things just broke my mind open, and I realized, oh, it's not the cow, it's the how. It's not that milk is bad, it's how we have been producing it that's bad. And I decided that the most integrous thing to do was to steward land. And so I ended up going from LA, Sunset Boulevard, Pasadena, Echo Park, Culver City, all the different locations, to living on a ranch in Texas, raising hogs and cattle and sheep and goats, and having an on-farm restaurant, and a very different life here in Texas.
It's been very satisfying, I can tell. You can see it all over your face that you found your niche. So I think
Yes,
that's
sir.
fantastic. I love it. There's so much passion involved in things today. I think the people that find their passion, it's an amazing thing because, you're able to enjoy it every single day. You see the changes that you're able to make, and, it just makes everything you do. I love what I do. I've been in the industry a very long time. I love educating. I love training. I love informing. And I'm not a kid anymore. I've been doing this a very long time, and I absolutely love what I do every single day. So, us who are able to find our passion are incredible. I know you have a new book coming out. Um, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that, and of course, let people know when it'll be available, because I think it's going to be a must read. Um, and I think
Yeah,
that's important.
it's coming out at the end of this month. It's called Debunked by Nature, and you can go to debunkedbynature.com right now and pre-order it, and it will come to you in the last couple of days of September. Uh, Basically, the veganism, like I said, was the beginning of the crack in the armor, and then COVID. I was I was a non-medicalized child. I grew up in a hippie household that was very kind of, I never went to the doctor. I have very, and when I did, I think my pediatrician was Tom Cowan from Western A. Price, was my pediatrician when I was a kid. So that gives you a sense of how medicalized I was. So when COVID came around, I was for sure not about to, I was 100% not about to be wearing a mask or taking the shots or anything. And so then I got like ejected from my whole friend group kind of, and I started to look. So the first crack is the regenerative agriculture, cows are not the problem. Second crack is veganism isn't real. Third crack is, wow, people don't think for themselves. I just was like, whoa, I'm noticing that all these people that were homeschooling their kids so they didn't have to vaccinate, and all of these different things, all of a sudden, like, wanted to go to Cabo. So, and I thought, oh, I see, it's like there's some level of commitment, but the commitment like ends at the cruise, or ends at the wedding, or ends at the whatever you wanted to do. And so that made me question, like, what is truth? Do we even know what is truth, or we've all just been indoctrinated? And I face that I could have just been indoctrinated to not want to get a vaccine and not want to wear a mask. And I was indoctrinated that your body is perfect and is always trying to get coherent and is always trying to get back to health. And if you give it the tools to do that, it's going to do that. And I thought, well, I was indoctrinated to that. Is that true? Is that real? Well, I don't know, but it feels a lot better to empower that version than that I need to go pray to some pharmaceutical gods for health and get and beg for something. And so that was like the next crack. And then, so as COVID is going along, I just started to recognize that my views on a lot of things were changing. And I'm a vegan chef in Los Angeles, drive a hybrid, highly environmentalist. I'm married to an undocumented man. I mean, you should probably look up liberal in Wikipedia, and there's a picture of me right there. And I'm starting to go like, am I liberal? Like, what does the Liberal Party have for me? And I realized that I was probably more conservative. I owned my own business, so I wanted to fiscal conservativeness. And then I was a mother, so there was certain things I wanted conservativeness for my children. And so I started to look at nature, and I started to really ask, what is truth? And then, is nature an expression of God or expression of perfection? And if it is, then you have to have the thought that if we're seeking truth, which everybody was during COVID, it seemed like, then let's take it to nature. And so the book is called Debunked by Nature. And I take 18 concepts of our society right now, and I bring them into nature, to the woods, to the savannah, to the pastures, and to the farm and I ask, is this true? And they're not all political things. Obviously, some of them are, but some of them are just about breastfeeding, about co-sleeping, about things that we don't necessarily do for extended periods of time in our culture, but every other culture does. So, and every other mammal on the planet sleeps with their child, and we put them far away with a radiating device, some sort emitting radiation, looking at them so we can see them from our phone while we're being radiated by our phone. It doesn't make any sense, right? And so, I look at breastfeeding and the length of most mammals compared to the length of their life that they breastfeed their children and us. But I also look at, you know, immigration and a lot of political issues too. And I take them all into nature and I ask, what is truth? And so I think this is an interesting way to look at the world. And so that's what the book is about, Debunked by Nature. I think that it will annoy both conservatives and liberals. It will likely annoy liberals more than it will annoy conservatives. But let's be honest, liberals get more annoyed about stuff. So that's to be expected. But I push up on the envelope on both sides. My life is, I like to consider myself a radical centrist. But the thesis of the book is that nature is conservative. Like it will conserve for itself, that all mammals value water, food, clean water, food, reproduction, and to a lesser extent, shelter, depending on what mammal it is. And we have prioritized shelter, and by extension, shelter comfort above food, water, and reproduction, which is not a success formula for any mammal. And if you were to take that formula out into nature, that thing would die pretty quickly.
And I'm so excited. I can't wait to get it and to read through it. I'm just on the edge of my chair. I can't wait. And I love the viewpoint. I love the passion that you're putting into this. And yeah, you're right. You're gonna annoy people on both sides of the fence, and that's perfectly fine. But a lot of this stuff is stuff people need to, and many of them will secretly agree, but many of them don't agree in public. They agree in private.
Oh no, I'm for sure. I mean, people always say like, "Oh, it's so brave of you," like on Instagram or whatever, and I'm like, it's not brave. It's just telling what I view as the truth. And I mean, I'm going to tell you, when you lose, I built up this huge business worth millions of dollars, and then COVID with a stroke of a pen. The other thing that was breaking my helmet at the time is I was selling my restaurants for 25 to 31 million dollars during this time. And we were in the deal. I had to reach these certain sales goals. And last quarter of 19, I reached them. First quarter of 2020, out of the park. We're going to get the 31 million. We're basically celebrating. And then with the stroke of a pen, the government closed down indoor dining for 2.5 years in California and ruined that deal for me and I thought, well, I just got to weather the storm, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever. And then I'm going to sell it for the millions of dollars. But literally California never came back between COVID, writer's strike, actors strike, fires. It's just homelessness, explosion, the safety issues. It just never came back. It never was. And my restaurants were small tables, like kind of New York style, like small tables, tightly packed, a lot of people at the bar, 3 people deep, reaching for food, doing millions and millions of dollars a year. That was no longer appealing. People were scared of each other. We got trained to think that everybody was dirty and scary. And so I tried to pivot, did a lot of things during COVID, ended up with only 2 restaurants left at the end of COVID from 5. And so not only did the bureaucrats steal my $31 million, they stole my restaurants that were paying me $1 million a year for that I built up from nothing, from like slinging sacks of weed to like having these crazy big restaurants. That got stolen. 15 years of I worked for 7 years without any days off except for Christmas and Thanksgiving. And I did that for 7 years consecutively until I had a child. And then I started taking Mondays off. But that was all stolen. And I made a very great success in a state that's hard to make success in brick and mortar businesses. And my upset during COVID was that nobody cared. It was like all my friends, everybody was like, well, everybody's just doing the best they can. I'm like, no, literally, we're not. We're not. There's states all over that are opened up after 2 months. Like, we're not doing the best that we can. The best that we can would be to be listening to the constituents and not just following orders. And I went to like these hearings online. There'd be 11,000 comments saying, please don't keep us closed. You're going to put us out of business, blah, 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 blah. And there'd be like 7 comments saying we should keep restaurants closed. And I would be like, I would go to my representative's office and I would sit down and I'd say, explain, or I wouldn't sit down. I'd sit behind a glass and then I would talk through a microphone. And I would say, I don't understand. You said you were voted in by us, and the us came out 11,000 comments in the virtual town hall, whatever, because nobody can be in the same room because we're all terrified of each other. And he said, my person said, get on the train. It is already moving. I was like, I don't understand. The train of destroying every restaurant in LA and many small businesses that are not restaurants is already moving, and I should just give up. And essentially that's what they were telling me. Just go with it. This is what's happening. And it didn't matter what people wanted or people said. And so that also broke a lot of my faith in, I don't know that I had that much faith in the system, but I was an American who thought like ultimately we the people have the power. And that got broken for me. Like, oh, you don't care. There's some powers up here that are saying that Democrat states do this and Republican states do this, and we don't get to any say in it. There's no say for the people. And that's how it felt during COVID. And it also felt like it was on purpose to destroy the independent wealth maker, because they would make these rules that cost money to implement. You can have outdoor dining, but you need this and this and this and this. So we pay $70,000 to get plastic dividers and this and that and all these different things and extra heaters and plastic whatever so that you could have people dine outside. And then they'd come back around and they'd say, okay, no outdoor dining. Wait, I don't understand. I just spent $70,000 getting the patios ready. They'd say booths. If you have booths back to back with 8-foot backs, you don't have to have 8 feet between them. Because we're like, well, how many, when they started to have dine in again, you had to have 8 feet between tables. But if you had booths. So I redid all the restaurants in booths, thousands and thousands of dollars for new booths with these high dividers in the back, which were terrible because the restaurant always looked empty because you couldn't see past any other booth, right? So, and then they said, oh no, the booth thing was, it didn't work. And it would be tables need to be 6 feet, tables need to be 8 feet, chairs need to be 6 feet, chairs need to be 8 feet because people could move a chair. And it would always be at midnight on Friday, you have to da 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 da. And you can't eat at a bar, but you can eat at a table. You can take your mask off while you're eating, but not while you're using the restroom. I mean, nothing makes any sense. And what was crazy to me is the whole world, is what it felt like, just went along with it. So I started to look to nature and say, like, do we quarantine healthy? I'm like, okay, if one of the animals is sick in the herd, do I make every single animal go in a separate pen, or do I take the sick animal away? I take the sick animal away. Like, this is just like logic. And these are the I started looking at what is actually happening where in God's design and nature, because it felt to me like we were in this crazy upside down world. And that really broke all of my mind. And I would say that one other thing that broke my mind, and people will get mad, is I hated Tucker Carlson prior to the COVID. I hated him. I'm married to an undocumented man. I think that he thinks my children are replacement something. I forget what it was, but he hates my children because they're Mexican and their father was undocumented. This is what I'm thinking. And he becomes the only person on Fox News, on normal TV, saying it's okay to get vaccinated. not to get vaccinated. So I start listening to him and I'm like, oh, he's an environmentalist. I didn't know that. He saunas every day. I didn't know that. And I start to see his humanity. And I still don't agree with him on certain things, for sure not on the border. I mean, I believe in a secure border, but I don't believe we don't need labor from Mexico and Honduras, Guatemala, Salvador. So I believe we need to have better pathways for that labor, because as long as we need the labor, we should not be supporting the cartels in order to get the labor here, which is what we are doing. Is every bit of every one of us buys food harvested by migrant workers that paid cartels to cross the border rather than with a visa program with the United States. So we need to take control of the border. But me and him don't agree on that. But I started to see his humanity. And what I realized was we have to love people we don't agree with, and we have to agree with people we don't love. And so everything in my whole world shifted from 2018 when I started the whole regenerative farm to now. And now I live in Texas and I raise animals, and we have a farm on the restaurant. We have 40 beds of hospitality. We're doing a food is medicine retreat at the end of the month here with a bunch of doctors. We do other retreats, yoga retreats. We do men's work. We do church retreats, weddings. And it's a totally different life than I was living before. But it's more on my terms.
I call what you're doing now living. So you progress to a level of living that you get to enjoy and savor and be passionate about. And what's funny is I was traveling and I was up in Seattle, and I came out of a dinner lecture and I walked outside and people were putting ply boards on their windows of their store, but they didn't tell us what was going on. And they shuffled us to the airport, flew us back home. I came back to Las Vegas and I got off the plane, and one of my friends picked me up and he goes, "Have you been listening to the news?" And I'm like, "No." And he goes, "The world is shutting down." I said, "No, it's not." And he goes, "I swear to God, there's an infection. The world is shutting down." And 2 days later, the world shut down. And I mean, I was just like, I could not wrap any part of my brain around this at all. And everybody I know was home, and I had to be home for a while. And finally, I called the people in my company and I said, "Look, you got to get me on the road. I am talking to my dogs. I'm talking to my horses. They're talking back. I need people. You got to get me back out here again." So, I mean, I still can't wrap my mind around it. It was like a really bad dream.
It
And
was.
and people got hurt. People lost so much stuff as yourself, and people lost their individuality. They lost their trust. They lost their community. They lost their sense of reverence and balance and people skills. I still know people today that they're still not back. They're different.
And kids that came into the pandemic at 10th grade and graduated during the pandemic all remotely, try employing them, because I have been employing them, and it is very strange that what is going, like, they don't have the normal like push through skills that most kids had, because they just kind of got shuffled out of high school. And I do think that there is a cost to society that we're not aware of. My son was 3 months old when the pandemic started. He's 5, almost 6 now. And he couldn't talk for the longest time because I didn't wear a mask anywhere but inside my restaurants, because my own employees called OSHA, called the health department, called all the stuff, right? And on airplanes. And I had this like silver mask that was just silver mesh, so that it looked like it was a mask, but it was fake. But anyways, that he wouldn't breastfeed when I had a mask on, but he had to come to the restaurants with me. The other kids were left at home. And so he was breastfeeding. So he was in the restaurant. And so he couldn't talk for the longest time, because apparently you learn to talk by looking at mouths, and everybody's mouths were covered. And so when this happened, I was looking it up on the computer, and then not 2 weeks later, I was going to show someone, like, he's supposed to be able to put like 9 words together at this time, blah, blah, blah. And I looked, and they had extended the deadlines for speech. The delays had all been changed on the government websites. And so I called a speech therapist. She came and looked at him. She said, honestly, I'm so overworked right now because there's so many kids that didn't learn to speak during COVID, especially ones that were all day at a daycare and everybody had a mask on and their parents were working 8 to 10 hours a day or whatever. And they were having a mask on and the people were having a mask on. These kids are not talking, or not, maybe the babies didn't, but everybody at the daycare. So they weren't seeing anybody's mouth moving, and then they'd go home, bath time, and go to bed. And I said, well, how do you know he's better than they are? And she's like, oh, they can't even hold their mouth to keep the saliva in, let alone talk. They don't even know how to, like, there's a way that we learn to hold our mouth from watching other people do it.
Wow.
And so he ended up catching up just fine. And he's actually really smart because he homeschools with my other kids. And so they're way ahead of him. And so he's way ahead of other kids his age now. But at the time, I was, wow, this is having an impact. There's an impact here that we're not present to.
It's just it was a bad time, all the way around, and but I'm so happy that you're standing up and voicing, and I think that that's really, really important, because standing up and voicing without passion gets you nowhere. But if you're passionate about your feelings and the things that you're trying to be verbal and vocal about, it goes a lot farther. So, and you can't
Well,
teach passion.
no. And when you change your mind publicly
Mhm.
and get eviscerated the way I did,
Uh-huh.
then it's not as scary anymore. Because, like, what can they do to me now?
Mhm.
Like,
Getcha.
I've had everything taken from me. And so there's little that they can take from me now.
Let
And
let I'm just thinking real quick, it's on the tip of my tongue right now. Within the farming community, what was the mentality like? And, the people that were out there that were already farmers, that were doing agriculture, how was their mentality with all of this? Were they signing on with, let's say, establishment, or were they doing their own thing?
mostly doing their own thing. But of course, there was some people that were signing on, but I would say mostly doing their own thing. And all during COVID, we had a volunteer program every Sunday, and it became like people's church because there was no church. And getting together, being in communion, having a big meal. We did a big family style meal, and we would do land work in the morning, have a meal and land work in the afternoon, or if it was hot, something shaded, something that we could do. And people just loved connecting with the land. I was just talking to someone about it yesterday. I haven't started that program up here, but I would like to start it up because there's something about working on land with other people that is so fundamental to being human. This working together on land to grow food is something that we have done for a very long time. And it's in us, in our DNA. And so there's something that is healing about that and feels really, really good. And that was amazing during COVID. And I want to start it up here in Texas. And that's part of what I want to do here in Texas is be the ripple effect. Like, let's say you're in Texas, you come visit, you stay in a tiny house and you hear the chirping crickets and you walk down and you pet a cow and you go have a kimchi sourdough patty melt. And then you go watch the cows get milked, or you go see a goat and you walk out across the creek and you say the pastured pigs, and then you have a BLTA. That experience of being on land, eating the food from the land, having coherency, local food has information in it that is informing your epigenetics, informing your DNA in such a way that is really, really powerful. And I know people that have cured cancer, in a stage 4 cancer in their child, by just going to all local foods, because we are now eating all this food from all around the planet because we've outsourced it to the cheapest hourly wage everywhere. But that's causing confusion in our bodies, as well as the chemicals and all the other stuff. But we have to get back to some sense of local eating, the small farm diet. How much of our diet can we buy from a local farm? And people ask me all the time, Mollie, you say you're struggling. What could we do? You say that we've lost 140,000 farms. What can we do besides buy from local farms? Literally, like, the average person, all I need you to do is buy from local farms. Like that, we are in a full on agrarian collapse. And so you're going to pay a doctor later or you're going to pay a farmer today. And my question is, which would you rather? And yes, your insurance may pay the doctor later, but what are you going to avoid? Can you afford really not to buy local food? And so I just want people to go to the small farm diet, the local diet, be willing to make that little extra journey to go stop by the farm, pick up your raw milk, pick up your meat, pick up some veggies, go to the farmer's market, because we are in a full on agrarian collapse. 1 in 15 farms we have lost in the last 8 years. In 8 years, we've lost 170,000 farms.
I think that the thing that people have to remember is, regenerative is a very powerful word. But it doesn't apply just to the soil and just to the crops. We have to learn how to live a regenerative life, which means take but give back and rebuild and rehydrate and rejuvenate. And we're not just doing it for today, we're doing it for the generations coming forward, because we have completely ignored our soil. We haven't paid any attention to it. And I think that it's really important. And my question is, and I'd love to get your viewpoint on this, do farmers that are organic, that have become a certified organic farm, do you think that most of them plan on elevating to a regenerative farm, or are they happy just being organic? Do they have the passion to take it to the next level to become regenerative, or do they only want to stay with organic?
I think it's like both. I think that organic is a different track.
Yeah.
So you mentioned at the beginning of this interview that you've been around since the beginning of the organic movement. So
Yes.
from the 70s till now, we have brought more land into regenerative in the last 10 years than we have into organic since the 70s. So I think regenerative, at least many of the regenerative programs, are meeting farmers where they're at and helping make that transition. And so because of that, I think that we have a power and a possibility to bring way more farmers into regenerative. I went the opposite way. I was certified organic and then I was ROC, and now I've decided to go to Regenified instead, which is uh, Regenified is a certification by Gabe Brown and Dr. Alan Williams. And just with Gabe Brown and understanding ag and what they're doing, he's brought more in the last 10 years into regenerative than has been organic since the 70s. So, but they are really focused on the soil testing. And so, and animal, how the animals are being treated, animal integration, but they're coming out and they're checking your soil. They're checking what you're doing. And so with organic, it's a lot of paperwork and it's a lot of submitting these paperworks. But it's very paperwork heavy for a small farm, and it's very challenging to make that happen on a smaller scale. Like if I grow 250 different things and you need to keep dates of every single seed that you have ever bought, you need to take every single when you bought it. Then you have, if you buy non-treated conventional seed, it's allowed, but you have to prove that you searched for organic seed and you couldn't find it. And so you have to have, not only do you have to have the receipt for the seed, you have to have a Google search saying that you searched for the other thing. And so there's all this stuff that's really paperwork heavy. And I prefer the regenerative approach, regenified approach, where they're coming out, they're testing your soil. They're saying, oh, there is less chemicals and there is more organic matter. You are going in the right direction. That's what we need. And so that to me is more appealing. So I don't know if some will go to the ROC, or I don't know if there's going to be another kind of organic certification on top of organic like ROC is, but I think a lot more farmers are meeting in the middle and saying, you know what, I really do want to do something better. But also with Regenified, you get your stamp right the first year, but then you agree that in the first year you're going to go to this and you're only like a bronze. And then by the second year you get to this, you could be a silver. And by the next year and you have to agree. And by 9 years, by 3 years, you have to meet certain standards. By 1 year and by 9 years, you have to meet certain things. So I think this kind of approach is having the consumer help fund the transition. And I think by helping the consumer fund the transition, we can be the soft landing for farmers when we know how many farms were lost in the last 8 years, 1 in 15.
And I think a lot of it is the education process, as you're doing, as we try
Yes.
to do. And the hard part is a lot of people, they don't have a clue.
No.
And sometimes I'll have these conversations, and of course I get overly passionate about everything I do, and I just watch their heads exploding as we're talking, because it's just too much coming at them at one time, because I have a tendency to shovel it with a bulldozer really fast, and they're just like, whoa. But they do walk away with enough information to at least create kind of huh, I haven't thought about that. No one's talked about that. So there's a lot of teaching, a lot of education to do, and I'm hoping that. I was talking about this yesterday. I was at a convention this weekend, and we were talking about how we need more youthful, younger people to be part of this as well. Even in the natural products industry, we need young people. Some of us are getting old. We need some young blood that needs to come in and step in and take over for us to keep it going. And that's an issue as well. Is how do we get younger people to be passionate? I mean, I come from a family that was all farming. They were all farming, and they had 10, 11, 12 kids, and my grandmother used to say they had 12 kids because they wanted free labor. And
Yes. Yes.
so but then that kind of disappeared. I drive into California and I see all that farmland that's now housing tracks.
Yes.
And it just galls me, it kills me. And so we need young blood, but we need people that are educated, and people that maybe already have the passion, but they may not even know they do.
And we need younger farmers. We need younger people in the space in all different places.
Yes.
And we need the space to not be partisan. And I think that this is like really important. I noticed recently with RFK joining Trump that all of a sudden people that I've known for my whole life to be passionate about not wanting chemicals in their food are all of a sudden like, oh, this is rah, rah, rah. And I'm like, wait, what do you mean? You don't want chemicals in your food. I watched you raise your children and feed them all organic. I don't understand. And so I don't like that if RFK and Trump are going to try to get red dye 40, which I don't think is the biggest issue. I think it's an issue. And I think it's getting, it's a step. It's a step in the right direction. But if we're going to act like that's a bad thing, or taking fluoride out of the water because it's Trump and RFK doing it, that's a weird behavior. And so I feel like we have an opportunity for a coalition right now of both sides of the aisle. But for some reason, all of a sudden, the people that have traditionally been very passionate about natural food are kind of like, oh, well, is it really that important? And I don't like that. I like that right now, we have to be a coalition, both sides. If Republicans are going to take up the Maha cause, then okay, great. We can't get off then liberals can't get off the pedal. They've been pushing this car uphill for a long time. We got to keep going together. Now you have more power to push the car uphill. But it seems that we're having like a swing. And I was at the Heritage Foundation 3 weeks ago. Oh, people got so mad. I lost thousands of followers. And I thought to myself, well, Heritage Foundation is like the largest conservative think tank. They wanted to have a day dedicated to soil health and human health and the connection. And they wanted to bring experts in to talk about this because they want it to be at the center of what they're pushing. Well, then I actually think this is an important thing. And it's not, for me, it's not partisan. Whatever side of the aisle you are on, you should want your children to be able to reproduce. You should want there to be no chemicals in your water and in your food. This is not a black, white, liberal, conservative. This is an every single person is being poisoned equally. There is nobody that's not being poisoned. And so it's time for us to stop bickering about little things and say, I want the future of my children to be one that they are able to reproduce. And right now, at the rate that we are losing men's sperm with the chemical load that we are all carrying, that's not going to be true for my 5-year-old. The average sperm count of a male in 2040 is estimated to be at zero at the current level of collapse. We have to wake up together. We have to stop arguing about microaggressions and start talking about that we're being sterilized by poisons. And it is important that we wake up and shift our pathway.
It, it's it sounds so easy when you just say we need to do this and we need to get behind it, and people will shake their heads and they'll agree with you, and then the balls become dropped constantly. So this is going to be something that we're going to have to like keep pushing as hard as we possibly can. There's going to be the aha moments. They're really going to
Mhm.
come. We're going to see the light bulbs, but right now
Yeah.
it's a little dark out there. So
It is a little dark out there, but I really believe that there is forces out there that want us to be divided about all types of stuff, because it's if we're divided, then we can be kind of I don't know the right word, but if we're divided, then we can be bickering amongst ourselves rather than turning our attention to the government and saying, absolutely not, stop it, ban this. We don't like, I'm not even into government interference except for with what, like our water and our air. Like, I think there should be like the commons should be regulated. Everything else, leave us alone. But this idea, and then they regulate all this, like California regulates all this crazy, like go to the farmer's market, measure your zucchini, go to the farm, measure the zucchini to make sure that you really grew it and that the ones you're harvesting are the ones you're selling, blah, 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 blah. But then they just let you spray Roundup anywhere you want.
hmm
And so for me, I don't get it. I feel like there's something for us to unite behind, and we need to unite. Let's go. Let's go. No sides, no partisan. Radical center. I'm for human health. Crazy out here.
how do people follow you? Where's the best place for people to stay tuned into you, plugged in?
Well, you can go to sovereigntyranch.com and join our mailing list. That is if you want to know what's happening on the ranch. And I am most active on Instagram. It's Talk to Mollie, but I'm on all the platforms that Talk to Mollie. And so you could see me at Substack, or you could see me at TikTok, or you could see me on X. But I'm most active on Instagram, and all of them are Talk to Mollie. And I'm launching a podcast here in the next couple weeks, which is also called Talk to Mollie. So maybe you'll have
Wow.
to come back and be a guest on my podcast.
I would absolutely love it. And the book, Debunked by Nature.
Yep.
How do they get it? How do they get it ahead of time? How do they call in, and what do they do?
So you can go to debunkedbynature.com right now and order it, and it's discounted. So it's $5 off if you pre order, or you can buy it after the release date, which would be September 25th. Right now, it's not up on Amazon yet, but it is up on my publisher's website, which go to debunkedbynature.com. And that's Acres USA is my publisher. It's a big farming publisher. This is their first non-farming book. So let's show
Wow.
them that the world wants them to do more than just farming books. And then I write a column a couple times a week in Epoch Times. So if you subscribe to Epoch, you'll get to read what I'm thinking about. I talk about nature and soil health and mothering and breastfeeding and all different kinds of stuff, what's going on the farm. And so I have that column uh, that comes out regularly. So you can find me there if you're a subscriber to them.
I love it. Leave everybody with a Molly thought of the day. Hmm.
So in soil and in the human microbiology in your gut, there's all of this low, like overlap of function and species. And if you believe in the Bible, then God picked up the soil and he made man. And if you believe in the science, you can see all this overlap of all the species that are the same, and all the DNA that's the same, and all the function that's the same of all these things. And it's obvious that we're meant to live with the soil and of the soil, and we have forgotten. And in our culture, we often talk about trust your gut, go with your gut instincts. It's your guttural, get your guttural instinct, go with your gut. And those ideas are actually referring to that our gut is our second brain. but we have disconnected so much from the soil, so much from vaginal birth, so much from breastfeeding, that we have an industrial microbiome, and we're eating food that is coming out of industrial systems, so it doesn't have the remnants of the microbiome on it. And so because of that, we might not be able to trust our gut, because creation, God that's in us, is broken. And it's important for us to get back to the soil, eating locally, replenishing your gut microbiome, breathe in natural spaces, go in water in natural spaces, eat something right off of the bush, and grow that microbiology so that your body can remember with coherency and remember and hear the Spirit, the Lord that is talking to you all the time, because you belong here. And I want every person to walk out of their house. Sometimes the green movement can make us feel like we're a plague, a pestilence, a problem. You are not. You belong here. And I want you to walk out of the house every day like, I belong here. How can I be the best cell in the body of Earth? What can I do to make a difference? And then do it.
I love it. I love it. I want to thank you so much for being here today. This has been fantastic, and I hope you guys love this, because I know you will. I've been talking with Mollie Englehart, and we've been talking about, oh goodness, we talked about a lot. So when this drops, I want you guys to pass this on to everyone. Let them get a good feeling of what's going on and not going on the world around them, and take the time to do something awesome. And remember, prioritize yourself. Make yourself fit in the mix. Get off the back burner. Get to the front burner. Start treating yourself with respect and love, and also treat everybody around you the same way. Mollie, thank you for being here. I'd love to have you back again. If you'd love to come back, I'd love to have you back again.
I'd love to come back anytime. You let me know. You send me an email, and I'll get on your calendar. And as I get my podcast up and running, I'd love to have you on as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. Everybody have a wonderful day. Be well, be good, be healthy, and do something great. God bless.
Stay tuned for more information from the Honest Health Podcast with Jeffrey Burke. And make sure to check back often for interviews and conversations from the guests we all want to hear from. I'm John the Announcer. Thanks for listening.